Thank you very much, Speaker. And I would like to start with the customary, I'm pleased to participate in this debate. But what I will say, Speaker, is we've come to the end of a long and I might say a tedious and a misunderstood process. And I will also call it a disappointing process for me, but much more importantly, a very disappointing process for the province of Ontario. I want to make something absolutely clear from the outset. Ontario Progressive Conservatives are against this government, and we are voting against this government. It was never about a budget. It was about a government and an approach to budgets and budgeting generally. This is the 10th budget of this government. We have never seen promises made and promises kept, and there was never a reason why we should have believed it of them this time, and we have not been surprised. That is where we were when our leader Tim Hudak announced that we would not be supporting this bill. Nothing has changed. The New Democratic Party said that they believed in collaboration, that we should believe in collaboration. The NDP got it wrong, and history of the last several months has proven that. The Liberals have created the largest debt and annual deficits in our province's history throughout their 10 years in power, and now their accomplices, the NDP, have vacated their own self-proclaimed moral high ground and thrown away their own moral compass of their own design to join the Liberals down in the muck. And that, Speaker, is precisely why people, when you talk to them, say all politicians are the same. And it just ain't so. Ontario's debt has doubled from $139 billion in 2003 to $273 billion in 2013. This debt is set to triple, Speaker. Debt per person has gone up by $9,000 to $21,000 for every man, woman, and child. And every once in a while, you say to yourself, look around you and ask yourself, who cares? Not the Liberals, not the NDP. Well, everyone else, Speaker, should care. And why should they care? Because we are talking, as the finance minister was, about stability within a province that has been devoid of stability for a number of years now. A province that under this regime, propped up by the NDP, will not see the implementation of anything stable because, notwithstanding his protestations, this finance minister and this government cannot bring the budget into balance in the time frame that they've set for themselves or anything remotely resembling that. They're caught up in a web of their own making. We have witnessed over the course of most of the past year a government hamstrung by yet another scandal of its own making. And I'm talking about the power plant fiasco, the illegal email cover-up. And Speaker, how did this begin?
I'd ask members if they have conversations to take them out of the chamber. Continue.
Thank you, Speaker. This began, and I want to remind everybody, this began with a legitimate request in the Estimates Committee for information that the people of Ontario own by a legitimate party and legitimate representatives of it asking for it. That's all it was. And we've had every kind of can and brick and boulder stuck in front of the bus every step of the way, and we still are. We will adjourn today, we'll come back in the fall, and this is not going to go away. And it follows on what? E-health and Orange and eco-fees and God knows what else. This is a government that has lost the moral authority to govern, and it's a government that's being propped up by a party that wants to tell you that it represents the moral compass of Ontario when there is anything but the truth in that statement. Until now, I always thought that the NDP had stood firmly on its principles. There was a standing joke that I heard probably the first week that I ever spent in this legislature. NDP and Progressive Conservative members share the same anteroom lobby outside of this chamber. And they used to say to us, well, we don't agree on very much, but we do agree on this. Our party and your party have principles which makes us different and in common from the Liberals. That's what they used to say. That's gone. This is a party, the one that I represent, that has presented a plan, a legitimate plan for how Ontario can be put back on the right footing. and we've taken great pains to do it over the course of the past year and a half, presented 12 white papers. Do they represent the sum total of everything we want to do or think should be done? Of course not. That's not the nature of white papers. But they represent a lot of things that could be done, and from them, in true consultative fashion, our party has come to conclusions that we will take into the next election and that will be a plan for Ontario to put it right. So now what we've got is we've got an NDP party that hides under the guise of collaboration in order to, what they say, will advance Ontario. The only thing that this budget, supported by the NDP, is going to do is hurt Ontario. The NDP has become somewhat drunk on being the power broker, and the loss for that proclivity will be dear. It was shocking to me, shocking, that the third party voted in favor of second reading of this budget on the very same day that the Privacy Commissioner released her report on the fact that this government committed an illegal act as it intentionally withheld and destroyed information and then covered it up. That's the day that they voted second reading on this. This is arguably the biggest scandal yet in the history of the province of Ontario in terms of the size and scope of the dollars wasted, the dollars spent, notwithstanding e-health, notwithstanding Orange. The third party complains in this House every single day about a scandal-plagued government and how it's driving Ontario into the ground. This is the ultimate pot calling the kettle black. That can now be said because the NDP is the enabler.
Hear, hear.
The party that wants to end unemployment. The party that wants to end unemployment assists in the proliferation of unemployment. Let's help young people, they say. Let's get $195 million to engineer a youth employment program. Instead, this government gives them $295 million. My attitude is, great idea taken in singularity. A budget is not about singularity. We have 500,000 plus people in Ontario, not necessarily youth, all kinds of people, and every one of them deserves the opportunity to work. Why single that out? Why? Because that's on the agenda of the NDP, and hey, if you're Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals, let's just give it to them. Now here they are, propping up the Liberals to put their own selfish ends first. That's what the NDP has become, selfish. They say it's about collaboration.
Order. I asked you to take conversations outside the chamber. Continue.
They say it's about collaboration. They say it's a desire of the citizens, and it reflects their wish not to go to the polls. What utter nonsense. If you know anything about Ontarians, Ontarians will tell you that they hate to go to the polls on actual scheduled election days. Ontarians don't like to vote. And don't take my word for it, look at the voter turnout. It's about 50%, less in some ridings. So it's not about whether we want to go out and vote or whether Ontarians like to go out and vote. It's about the legitimization of a government that needs to become legitimate because, Speaker, right now it's not. The NDP's laundry list of demands will cost an additional $1 billion annually in new spending initiatives. Where will this price for peace come from? That's money that is not going to expand health care, it's not going to build subways, it's not going to create jobs. Build subways, indeed. I might say a few words on that. Liberals say that it'll take revenue tools. Even the NDP is against that. Revenue tools, why don't we call it what it is? Taxes. The Liberals and the NDP are both fully accountable for the financial disaster and kicking the can down the road for future generations. I said it, Speaker, and I'll say it again. $21,000 on the back of every single Ontarian, including the babies being born in hospitals around Ontario today. The NDP's hands are now directly tied to the downward spiral of this province's economy. Let them know it, and let every Ontarian know it. The deficit, 2010, $14 billion. 2011, $13 billion. 2012, a contrived deficit of $9.8 billion. And I can say why it was contrived. Take the amount of money that you saved in dealing with teachers, take accounting movements by using reserve funds, and you can make it look like anything. What's the proof point? 2013, this budget we're discussing today, an increased deficit, $11.7 billion. And the finance minister has the audacity to stand here and say that he's going to give us a balanced budget by fiscal 2017-18. So between 2010 and 2012, revenue increased by $7 billion, despite the deficit decreasing by only $4.2 billion. Isn't that amazing? The Minister of Finance touts that the deficit has improved by $5 billion. As I said, it isn't so. It's just fun with figures. He neglects to say that there are largely one-time savings, and those include $1.5 billion from reducing liabilities associated with public sector sick day banking. Speaking of sick day banking, how about the new arrangements with teachers? How do you think that's working out? I understand that there's an awful lot of absenteeism on Monday and Friday. Put two and two together, I say that to Ontarians. All of the major ministries will see government spending increase over the next 2 years. Health, education, post-secondary, social services, justice. Cost breakdown of the NDP demands. Take one thing alone, 15% auto insurance cut. 15% auto insurance. Listen to them applaud. How is it going to be achieved? By instructing Fisco to order the insurance industry to reduce costs by 15%. Hey, I would love to have my insurance reduced by 15%. Do you know what happens with an insurance company or any other company that can't make a profit anymore? It stops selling what it ordinarily sells. So watch what happens in the insurance industry in the province of Ontario. The big question still remains, how will they balance the budget on time and on schedule? Let's talk about the Financial Accountability Office. This is something that the NDP is touting. Go ahead, applaud that one. Why don't I read into the record a couple of paragraphs from Christina Blizzard's column of today? She says, I'm not buying any of it. I'm not buying former Premier Dalton McGuinty's argument that he didn't know his staff had deleted all their emails. I'm not buying Andrea Horwath's fake outrage over the emails, only to watch her prop up this scandal-plagued government. The NDP leader was in defensive mode Monday, Financial Accountability Office, out of their support for the budget bill. Well, isn't that nice, she says. If we had politicians with integrity, with a shred of honesty, we wouldn't need to send good money after bad by paying for someone to come in and keep them accountable. Who gave Horwath control of the budget anyway? She's a co-conspirator along with Premier Kathleen Wynne in putting forward a budget that will add $40 billion to the debt over the next 2 years, and that's unacceptable. Look, a Financial Accountability Office, Speaker, I'm the Financial Accountability Office. My friend from Oxford is the Financial Accountability Office. My friend from Leeds Granville is the Financial Accountability Office. That's why there is an opposition. That's why there's a third party. They haven't got it straight. How is a Financial Ability Office going to stop people from receiving chemo drugs that are at half strength? How is the Financial Accountability Office going to stop a government from going out and spending, who knows, $1 billion to cancel the construction of power plants for political ends? A Financial Accountability Office can look at it forensically after the facts. It's political action that comes from the other side that keeps people in check. That's how it works. You want to cut auto insurance by 15%? I'll tell you how. Cut fraud by $1.5 billion. Okay? The auto insurance clause within the budget itself really comes down to what lawyers would describe as best efforts. That's what it is, best efforts. And we all know, because although not all of us are lawyers, we have enough to do with legalese in this place to know that best efforts means, hey, we'll try, but if we don't get there, sorry about that. And I have news for you. They're not going to get there. The fraud of the system is what costs us that extra $1.5 billion. Since the beginning of the almost 10 years of Liberal tenure, revenue has increased by $42 billion. That means that they're taxing every Ontarian more. You didn't know? And you're getting less. You didn't know? How's your electricity bill doing?
Yikes.
But spending has increased by over $48 billion. Increasing our deficit next year. This is not a sign to investors to come to Ontario. So when we talk about balanced budgets, what we're really talking about is sending a signal. A balanced budget says to an investor, it's okay to spend your money. This is a good place to be. A balanced budget says to a business person or to a board, it's time to unlock the vault. You've got billions in the bank. Let's put it in the ground and build a new plant. It's time for companies to expand their workforces and hire some of those 500,000 out-of-work people. Over 50% of all Ontario government program spending right now goes to public sector labour costs. One of Premier Wynn's first moves? Wynne immediately increased spending when she took office by expanding the size of government and creating new ministries. A wage freeze? Not in the Liberal ranks. Have you heard, Speaker, of the new elite? This is basically how Maclean's magazine, in a recent article, described the broader public sector. The new elite. People who have a remnant of the past, a defined benefit compensation plan, a defined benefit pension plan that lets you retire sometime in your 50s with somewhere between 60 and 75% of your salary. Who's paying for that? Every single Ontarian. And I include in that the 70% who have no pension benefit whatsoever. They're going to work till the day they die. That's us. Public sector compensation at this point now exceeds that of the private sector by 14%. The 27% number that I've quoted in this legislature before is the overall advantage when you factor in pensions and health and overall benefits. So the new public sector elite is getting national media coverage from Maclean's magazine. The Sunshine List increased by 11% in 2011, another 11% in 2012. 8,823 people in 2012 made it onto that list anew. And what's Premier Wynn's solution? She wanted to raise the $100,000 threshold for the Sunshine List to $150,000 so there wouldn't be so many people on it. Let me read something else into the record before I defer to a colleague. This is from the National Post. Scott Stinston wrote an article entitled, this is also today, Ontario Liberals suddenly find cash for unions. A week after the LCBO averted a Victoria Day weekend strike by offering workers $800 signing bonuses, the nakedly euphemistic term for a pay increase that is not technically a wage increase, another of Ontario's arm's-length agencies, Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, avoided a work stoppage at the Woodbine Slots facility. OLG, too, made it happen by proposing a last-minute offer that included a $600 lump sum payment in each of the first 2 years and a 1.95% wage increase in the third year. Concluding, so the found money at the liquor monopoly led to found money at the gambling monopoly, and there can be little doubt that the unions, representing all those other workers who agreed to 2-year wage freezes in the last year of the McGuinty government, watched all of this with interest. That means we know what's coming, because we have a situation in the province of Ontario where there are 4,000 collective agreements. And as I said in this House, when the teachers' settlements were announced about 8 weeks ago, expect every one of those people to get in line and ask for their entitlements because they believe that they're entitled to their entitlements. The Premier herself said in this House on March 4th, we've been very clear that constraining public sector wages is part of what we're doing and will continue to do. That's why we're on target. The Drummond report said that if we didn't take those measures, if we didn't work to constrain costs, then we would not be able to balance the budget. So I have a piece of news. This quote is accurate, but the Liberals have taken absolutely no steps to advance this, and what we've talked about here demonstrates that they're taking steps that are quite the reverse. Ontario is feeling the repercussions and the full cost of collapsing to unions for the past, I was going to say 9.5 years, but Speaker, it's going to be 10 years in October. There is no transparency in these union arbitration deals. The budget doesn't give any more clarity on the full cost of these backroom negotiations. We're just in problems. And I'll give you a quick personal story on the LCBO deal. Went in last week because I, too, was afraid that for the long weekend in May, I guess it's 2 weeks ago now, I better make sure that the Shurman family sipping wine was in stock, and so I bought a case of that particular wine at my local LCBO. And on the way out, I said to the clerk, "Did you receive your signing bonus yet?" She said, "Oh, signing bonus, it's not enough money. After all, they're going to take taxes off it, and by the time I have it, it'll probably be $300 or $400. That's the grace that we get from people who have gotten wage increases from a government that said it was going to hold the line at zero. So, in conclusion, let me go back to where I started. We are not voting against a budget, we're voting against a bill, but let it be clear. We are voting against a party, no, two parties, that have taken Ontario down the wrong path in the face of a party that has a plan. We're voting against a government and its accomplice. Thank you, Speaker.